The quantum-encrypted communication line crackled to life, displaying a holographic projection that seemed to defy the laws of current technological understanding. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez watched the incoming data stream with a mixture of anticipation and cold calculation. Outside the reinforced windows of the Rocky Mountain Command Center, the early morning light caught the edge of massive communication arrays that looked more like artistic sculptures than military hardware. "Incoming proximity alert," announced the AI system, its voice deliberately modulated to sound both precise and subtly human. Jareen scout fleet detected at outer solar system boundary. Rodriguez's fingers danced across the holographic interface, a series of mirror-linked commands activating systems that had been decades in preparation. What the Jareen didn't understand, what no alien civilization had ever comprehended, was humanity's capacity for patient, multi-generational strategic planning. The first human-alien contact wasn't going to be a moment of surprise. It was going to be a meticulously choreographed performance of technological and strategic superiority. Deep beneath the mountain, entire networks of quantum computers hummed with potential. Each system was a node in a global defense network that had been carefully constructed over generations. It wasn't just a military project. It was a species-wide commitment. Every technological advancement, every scientific breakthrough, every military strategy had been quietly redirected toward a single goal: absolute planetary defense. Commander Elena Rodriguez, Michael's sister and the lead strategic analyst, studied the incoming Jareen fleet configuration. Her augmented neural interface processed terabytes of data in milliseconds, revealing patterns that would be invisible to standard computational systems. "They're using the standard Imperial expansion protocol," she commented, her voice calm despite the magnitude of the moment. Predictable. Arrogant. The Jareen scout fleet approached with the confidence of a civilization that had conquered thousands of worlds. Their sensors swept across the solar system, detecting what appeared to be a technologically nascent species limited to its home planet and a few rudimentary space installations. What they didn't see was the truth. Thousands of stealth satellites, each more sophisticated than the entire technological ecosystem of the approaching fleet, lay dormant, quantum encrypted, powered by revolutionary zero-point energy systems, and constructed from materials that could literally bend light around them. These satellites represented the pinnacle of human technological innovation. Michael's hand hovered over the activation sequence. Decades of preparation had led to this moment. "Global defense grid status?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The AI responded immediately. "All systems optimal. Probability of complete mission success, 99.87%. The approaching Jareen commander, a veteran of hundreds of planetary conquests, reviewed the initial scans of the blue-green planet. Earth appeared primitive. Radio communications were basic. Space exploration was limited to a few nearby planetary bodies. The standard invasion protocol seemed almost laughably straightforward. Little did they know that every single technological breadcrumb had been deliberately placed. Every radio transmission, every seemingly primitive satellite, every apparent weakness was part of an intricate trap. "Initiating first contact protocol," Michael muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The moment the lead Jareen scout ship crossed a carefully calculated boundary, the world changed. Thousands of stealth satellites powered up simultaneously, their weapon systems coming online with such precise synchronization that it seemed like a single, massive organism had suddenly awakened. Quantum-linked weapon platforms that had been hidden in lunar craters, disguised as simple communication relays, and embedded in seemingly innocuous space debris, now revealed their true nature. Plasma cannons with targeting systems that could predict enemy movement before the enemy itself knew its trajectory powered up. Gravitational disruptors capable of tearing ships apart at the molecular level hummed with potential. The first Jareen ships never saw it coming. Commander Elena Rodriguez allowed herself the slightest smile. "First phase complete," she said quietly. "Welcome to Earth." Outside, Beyond the mountain's reinforced walls, the first salvos of humanity's greatest defensive and offensive operation were about to be unleashed. Commander Kryax of the Jareen Imperial fleet felt the first tremor of uncertainty as the initial assault wave disintegrated. The holographic displays in the command ship's bridge flickered with impossible data, weapon impacts that defied every known law of combat physics, targeting systems that seemed to predict Jareen movements before they could be executed. "Status report," he barked, his scaled appendages twitching with growing agitation. Sub-Commander Vexnal's response was uncharacteristically hesitant. "We've lost 42% of the first assault wave. The human defensive systems are adapting in real time." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Adaptation was not something the Jareen expected from a supposedly primitive species. Their entire military doctrine was built on overwhelming technological superiority, a strategy that had crushed thousands of civilizations across the galaxy. But not today. In the Luna Control Center, Major Rebecca Thompson watched the alien fleet's initial assault with a precision that bordered on clinical detachment. Her neural interface connected her directly to the global defense network, allowing her to see the battle from multiple perspectives simultaneously. "Gravitational disruptors are online," she murmured into her communication link. "Initiate Phase 2 tracking algorithms." The human response was nothing short of symphonic destruction. Each Jareen ship that attempted to reposition found itself caught in a web of predictive weaponry. Plasma cannons tracked and eliminated targets before the aliens could complete their evasive maneuvers. Quantum-encrypted communication channels were systematically compromised, turning the Jareen fleet's own communication network into a weapon of mass confusion. Commander Kryax watched in mounting horror as his tactical displays became nothing more than a graveyard of lost ships and impossible trajectories. The humans weren't just defending. They were hunting. "How is this possible?" Vexnal whispered, a heretical question in the rigid hierarchy of the Jareen Imperial fleet. A captured communication transmission provided a chilling answer. It was a deliberate broadcast, seemingly intercepted by design. A psychological weapon as devastating as any physical attack. "Adaptive response protocol confirmed," came a human voice, calm and almost bored. "Enemy fleet configuration mapped. Countermeasures proceeding at 98.3% efficiency." The broadcast continued, each word a calculated strike against the Jareen's sense of invincibility. It wasn't just about destroying ships. It was about dismantling an entire military philosophy. Dr. James Henderson reviewed the real-time data from the Lunar Research Station. What the military saw as a battle, he saw as the most extraordinary technological experiment in human history. Each alien weapon system was being studied, analyzed, and countered with a speed that defied conventional scientific understanding. "Neural network is showing complete alien weapon system breakdown," he reported to the Global Defense Command. "We're not just defending. We're learning." The Jareen fleet found itself caught in a nightmare of its own making. Every standard invasion protocol failed. Every tactical maneuver was anticipated and neutralized. The humans had transformed the very concept of defensive warfare into an art form of technological and strategic supremacy. Sub-Commander Vexnal made a fatal mistake. He attempted to launch a concentrated assault on what appeared to be a vulnerable human communication relay near Mars. The moment his ships moved, they found themselves targeted by a network of weapons that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Quantum-linked satellites, disguised as simple space debris, powered up with devastating precision. Gravitational weapons tore ships apart at the molecular level. Plasma cannons eliminated entire squadrons before they could complete their first defensive maneuver. "Impossible," Kryax muttered, watching his fleet being systematically dismantled. But it was happening. The human response was more than a military operation. It was a complete deconstruction of the Jareen's understanding of technological warfare. Each destroyed ship was a lesson learned, each eliminated weapon system a data point in humanity's rapid technological evolution. As the first phase of the battle concluded, the message was clear. Humanity was not just defending its home. It was rewriting the very rules of galactic conflict. Commander Kryax realized, with a growing sense of existential dread, that everything the Jareen believed about their galactic supremacy was about to be challenged in ways they could never have imagined. The global communication hub beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex buzzed with an energy that transcended typical military operations. Admiral Elizabeth Harper stood at the center of a holographic battlefield that stretched across multiple dimensions of technological warfare. "Infiltration protocol is green," reported Dr. Alexander Rodriguez, his fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted interfaces. "We're about to turn their entire communication network into our primary weapon." The Jareen believed in the absolute security of their communication systems. Quantum encryption, multi-layered authentication, and a communication framework that had remained unchanged for millennia. These were the pillars of their technological superiority. They never considered that a species they viewed as primitive could breach their most secure networks. They were wrong. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for generations. Every intercepted alien signal, every fragments of technological data collected from deep space probes, every theoretical model developed in classified research facilities, all of it had been building toward this moment of technological insurgency. The first wave of infiltration was almost elegant in its simplicity. Human-developed quantum algorithms began to slip through the Jareen communication barriers like water through the smallest cracks. What appeared to be routine system checks were actually sophisticated intrusion protocols that mapped the entire alien communication infrastructure. "We're in," Dr. Rodriguez whispered, a hint of reverence in his voice. Inside the Jareen command ships, the first signs of infiltration were subtle. Communication channels began to produce slight irregularities. Strategic reports became garbled. Tactical instructions carried unexpected contradictions. The Jareen communication officers initially dismissed these as minor system glitches. They were catastrophically wrong. Admiral Harper watched as the first phase of psychological warfare began. The human teams weren't just breaking into the Jareen communication network. They were rewriting its fundamental operational parameters. "Initiate misinformation cascade," she commanded. Suddenly, Jareen fleet commands began to conflict. Ships received orders to attack their own formations. Strategic defense protocols were subtly altered, creating chaos within their supposedly impenetrable communication systems. What had been a unified Imperial fleet began to fracture from within. Commander Kryax received the first truly alarming report from his communication officer. An entire battle group had turned on itself, destroying 3 cruisers in what appeared to be a catastrophic misunderstanding of deployment orders. "Explain," he demanded, his voice a mixture of fury and growing panic. The communication officer's response was something no Jareen commander had ever heard before. "Unknown system intrusion. Communication protocols compromised." Those 5 words represented the first true crack in the Jareen's belief of technological supremacy. Dr. Maya Chen, leading the Cyber Warfare Division, explained the strategy to a small group of military and scientific leaders. "We're not just hacking their system," she said, bringing up a complex holographic representation of the infiltration. "We're fundamentally rewriting their understanding of communication security." Each infiltration was a carefully designed piece of a larger psychological warfare strategy. The humans weren't just attacking the Jareen's technological infrastructure. They were dismantling their entire concept of technological superiority. Captured Jareen communication logs revealed the growing panic. Reports began to circulate about a species that could apparently predict and manipulate their most secure communication channels. Rumors spread faster than any official Imperial communication could contain them. The psychological impact was just as devastating as the technological breach. Entire Jareen battle groups found themselves paralyzed by uncertainty. If their communication networks could be compromised so completely, what else could these humans do? The mythology of Imperial invincibility began to crumble with each intercepted and manipulated communication. "It's not about destroying them," Admiral Harper explained to her team. It's about making them destroy themselves. As the infiltration continued, the Jareen fleet transformed from a unified military machine into a collection of confused, paranoid vessels. Each communication became a potential trap. Each order could be a fabrication designed to create maximum confusion. Commander Kryax realized, with a growing sense of existential dread, that they were no longer fighting a conventional war. They were fighting an enemy that understood warfare on a level the Jareen had never comprehended. Technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy that could turn your own systems into a weapon of your own destruction. The first true battle of galactic technological warfare was being won, not through conventional weapons, but through the most powerful weapon humanity had always possessed, its capacity to adapt, to understand, and to transform the very rules of engagement. The broadcast began at exactly 300 hours Galactic Standard Time, transmitted across every known Jareen communication frequency. It was a carefully crafted psychological weapon that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. Major Sarah Thompson stood in the specially designed transmission center, her fingers hovering over the quantum-encrypted broadcast controls. Around her, a team of linguists, psychologists, and communication specialists had spent months preparing this moment. "Transmission ready," announced Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, the lead communication strategist. The message was simplicity itself, raw, unfiltered recordings of Jareen communication channels during their failed assault, interspersed with calm human commentary that dissected every strategic failure. Each moment of Imperial hubris was laid bare, analyzed with a clinical precision that was more devastating than any physical weapon. Aboard the Jareen command ships, the broadcast created an immediate and profound effect. Commanders watched in growing horror as their most secure communications were played back, annotated with human insights that revealed layers of strategic incompetence they had never recognized. Commander Kryax felt something he had never experienced in his centuries of military service: profound humiliation. The human strategy went far beyond simple military confrontation. They were systematically destroying the Jareen's most fundamental belief system, their sense of galactic superiority. Each transmission was a carefully constructed psychological weapon. Captured Jareen commanders were interviewed, their moments of defeat analyzed with a detached, almost academic interest. The humans didn't just want to win. They wanted to understand. They wanted the entire galaxy to understand. Dr. Elena Reyes, the lead psychological warfare specialist, explained the strategy to her team. "We're not just fighting a war," she said, her holographic presentation showing intricate maps of Imperial communication networks. "We're dismantling an entire civilization's mythology of invincibility." The broadcasts began to have an immediate effect on Jareen colonies. Worlds that had been under Imperial control for thousands of years started to question their place in the galactic hierarchy. If the supposedly invincible Imperial fleet could be so thoroughly defeated, what else might be possible? Revolt began to simmer in the most unexpected places. On the Jareen communication hub world of Kryax Prime, colonial administrators watched the broadcasts with growing unease. The human strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. They weren't just defeating the Jareen militarily. They were giving hope to every subjugated species in the Imperial domain. "We're witnessing the death of an empire," whispered Admiral Harper to her closest advisors, "and we're doing it without firing a single additional shot." The psychological warfare had multiple layers. Each broadcast included subtle invitations to subjugated species, detailed information about Imperial oppression, combined with potential paths to liberation. The humans weren't just fighting the Jareen. They were providing a blueprint for resistance. Captured Jareen military leaders became unexpected tools in this psychological campaign. Carefully managed interviews revealed the internal rot of the Imperial system. Strategic failures were exposed. The myth of Jareen technological superiority crumbled with each revelatory broadcast. Dr. Rodriguez tracked the psychological impact in real time. Quantum algorithms mapped communication patterns, sentiment analysis, and colonial response rates. The data was clear and devastating. "We're seeing complete systemic breakdown," he reported. "The Imperial communication network is becoming a vector of its own destruction." The human strategy went beyond traditional warfare. They understood something the Jareen had never comprehended. True power wasn't about technological superiority. It was about the ability to challenge fundamental beliefs. Commander Kryax received the most devastating transmission yet, a compilation of Imperial failures, annotated with a calm, almost academic narration that exposed every strategic flaw in the Jareen military doctrine. Worse yet, the transmission was being received by every single Imperial communication channel simultaneously. There was no hiding, no escape. The galaxy watched as the supposedly invincible Jareen Imperial fleet was systematically dismantled, not just militarily, but psychologically. Each broadcast was a surgical strike against the very concept of Imperial supremacy. As the transmissions continued, one message became abundantly clear. Humanity was writing a new chapter in galactic history, and they were doing it with a combination of technological innovation, strategic brilliance, and a fundamental understanding of the most powerful weapon in any conflict, the ability to challenge and transform existing belief systems. The psychological warfare had begun, and the Jareen Empire would never be the same again. The Global Technological Integration Center hummed with an energy that defied conventional understanding of scientific research. Dr. James Henderson stood at the epicenter of humanity's most ambitious technological project, surrounded by holographic displays that showed real-time analysis of captured Jareen technology. "Breakthrough confirmed," he announced, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic calculation. What the Jareen didn't understand was humanity's fundamental approach to technological innovation. Where other species saw technology as a fixed system, humans viewed it as a living, breathing ecosystem of continuous adaptation. Each captured Jareen weapon system became a puzzle to be solved, reimagined, and ultimately transformed. The research teams worked in shifts that never stopped, a global network of the most brilliant minds working with a single purpose: total technological superiority. Dr. Maya Chen reviewed the latest quantum processor derived from a Jareen communication core. What had taken the alien civilization decades to develop was being completely reimagined in weeks. The original technology was almost unrecognizable, enhanced beyond its original capabilities in ways the Jareen could never have imagined. Adaptive replication protocol at 97.6% efficiency, reported the central AI system. The words meant more than just a technological achievement. They represented a fundamental reimagining of technological development. In orbital research stations, teams worked around the clock. Captured Jareen gravitational disruptors were being transformed into something entirely new. Where the original technology could destroy ships, the human adaptation could potentially manipulate entire planetary environments. Admiral Elizabeth Harper received the latest report from the research teams. It wasn't just about copying alien technology. It was about understanding the fundamental principles behind it, and then transcending those principles. "We're not just reverse engineering," she explained to her strategic team. "We're completely reimagining the concept of technological development." The Jareen had spent millennia believing their technological superiority was absolute. They never considered that a species might approach technology as a fluid, adaptable concept rather than a fixed set of rules. Dr. Rodriguez tracked the rate of technological adaptation. Each captured Jareen system was being analyzed, understood, and improved upon at a rate that defied previous scientific understanding. What would take other civilizations decades was being accomplished in weeks. A captured Jareen quantum communication core became the foundation for a new type of instantaneous communication network. Gravitational weapon systems were transformed into tools of planetary engineering. Defensive shields became the basis for entirely new approaches to energy manipulation. The research wasn't just scientific, it was philosophical. "We're learning their technology," Dr. Chen explained during a classified briefing, "but we're also learning how they think. And in that learning, we're finding their fundamental weaknesses. Aboard the orbital research stations, entire teams worked on what seemed like impossible projects. A weapon system designed to destroy became a tool for creation. A communication network meant for Imperial control became a potential method for interspecies cooperation. The Jareen had a fatal flaw in their technological approach. They saw innovation as a linear process. Humanity saw it as a multidimensional ecosystem of continuous adaptation. Commander Kryax received intelligence reports about human technological development that seemed to defy the laws of scientific progress. Entire weapon systems were being reimagined faster than the Jareen could comprehend their original design. What was happening wasn't just technological warfare. It was a complete transformation of the concept of technological development. Dr. Henderson stood before a holographic display of a newly developed quantum processor. What had once been a Jareen communication core was now something entirely different. More efficient, more adaptable, more alive. "We're not just fighting a war," he said quietly to his team. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of technological potential." The Global Research Network continued its relentless work. No sleep, no pause. Continuous adaptation became the only constant. As the Jareen Imperial leadership began to comprehend the scale of humanity's technological transformation, a terrifying realization began to take hold. This wasn't just a military conflict. This was a complete revolution in the understanding of technological potential. And humanity was leading the way. Major Sarah Thompson stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, her eyes fixed on the holographic tactical display that showed the expanding human offensive. This was no longer a defensive operation. Humanity was hunting. The Jareen central supply lines became the first target of a meticulously planned strategic assault. Decades of intelligence gathering, technological adaptation, and strategic planning converged into a single devastating campaign. Targeting protocols locked, announced the ship's AI system. Its voice carried a subtle undertone of what almost seemed like anticipation. The human fleet moved with a precision that defied conventional military doctrine. Each ship was more than a weapon platform. It was a node in a living, breathing network of strategic intelligence. Quantum encrypted communication channels allowed for tactical coordination that the Jareen couldn't even comprehend. Admiral Elizabeth Harper oversaw the operation from the Global Command Center. Her strategic team worked with a synchronicity that bordered on telepathic. Every Jareen movement was anticipated. Every defensive strategy was already being countered before it could be fully implemented. "They don't understand," Dr. Marcus Rodriguez commented, reviewing the tactical projections. "We're not just fighting their fleet. We're dismantling their entire Imperial infrastructure." The first strike targeted the Jareen communication relay stations. These weren't simple military installations. They were the nervous system of the entire Imperial network. By carefully selected precision strikes, humanity began to create strategic blindness within the Imperial fleet. Commander Kryax watched in growing horror as his communication networks began to fail. Entire battle groups found themselves cut off, isolated, unable to coordinate or receive critical strategic information. The human approach was surgical. Where other species would have launched a full-scale assault, humanity chose calculated strikes that maximized strategic disruption while minimizing unnecessary destruction. Supply lines became the primary target. The Jareen Imperial fleet relied on a complex network of resupply and communication that had remained unchanged for millennia. Humanity's technological adaptations allowed them to identify and exploit vulnerabilities that the Jareen couldn't even see. "We're not destroying them," Major Thompson explained to her tactical team. "We're systematically removing their ability to function as a cohesive military force." Captured Jareen communication logs revealed the growing panic. Imperial commanders found themselves unable to coordinate, to communicate, to understand the scale of the strategic assault being launched against them. Dr. Maya Chen's technological adaptation teams had prepared for this moment. Every piece of captured Jareen technology had been studied, understood, and transformed. Quantum communication jammers developed from alien technology, now became precise tools of strategic disruption. The orbital research stations worked in real time, developing counter-strategies faster than the Jareen could adapt. What would take other civilizations years was being accomplished in hours. Adaptive response protocol at 99.2% efficiency, reported the central AI system. Entire Jareen colony worlds began to receive broadcasts that challenged their understanding of Imperial control. The psychological warfare continued, but now it was supported by direct military action that demonstrated the futility of resistance. Commander Kryax received the most devastating transmission yet. Detailed strategic analyses of Imperial failures, combined with precise targeting of critical Imperial infrastructure. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were systematically dismantling an entire galactic power structure. The human fleet moved like a living organism. Each ship was more than a weapon. It was a node of intelligence, a part of a greater strategic network that could adapt and respond faster than any traditional military structure. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of galactic conflict," Admiral Harper said quietly to her closest advisors. As the assault continued, the Jareen Imperial fleet began to fragment. Colonies that had been under Imperial control for thousands of years began to see the possibility of liberation. The myth of Imperial invincibility was crumbling with each strategic strike. The turning tide wasn't just a military phenomenon. It was a complete transformation of galactic power dynamics. Humanity was writing a new chapter in interstellar conflict, and they were doing it with a combination of technological innovation, strategic brilliance, and a fundamental understanding of the most powerful weapon in any conflict, the ability to challenge and transform existing systems. The assault continued, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The first signs of total Imperial collapse began on the distant colony world of Vexnera. What had once been a model Jareen Imperial possession now teetered on the brink of total rebellion. Governor Kylax stood in the central administrative complex, watching the communication networks dissolve around him. The human broadcasts had done more than just provide information. They had ignited a spark of hope that had been suppressed for millennia. Subjugated species across dozens of star systems began to realize a fundamental truth. The Jareen were not invincible. Admiral Elizabeth Harper reviewed the galactic map in the Global Command Center. Each colored indicator represented more than just a strategic point. It was a civilization awakening, a collective realization of potential that had been crushed under Imperial control for generations. "Systemic breakdown confirmed," reported Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, his fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted interfaces. "Imperial communication networks are fragmenting at an exponential rate." The human strategy was brilliantly multilayered. Military strikes had weakened the Imperial infrastructure. Psychological warfare had undermined its mythological superiority. Now, the final stage of dismantling had begun. Commander Kryax found himself a prisoner of a conflict he couldn't comprehend. The interrogation rooms were nothing like he expected. Instead of torture or aggressive questioning, human researchers approached him with a clinical, almost academic interest. Dr. Maya Chen led the interrogation team. "We're not interested in punishment," she explained. "We want to understand, to learn." Each captured Jareen leader became an unexpected tool in humanity's broader strategy. Carefully managed interviews revealed the internal mechanisms of Imperial control. The broadcasts continued, now featuring insights from within the Imperial system itself. Colonies that had been under Jareen control for thousands of years began to rise. The suppressed species found themselves with unprecedented resources. Human technological adaptations were being shared, providing tools for liberation that went beyond simple military support. "We're not conquering," Admiral Harper explained to her strategic team. "We're enabling." The technological transfers were carefully managed. Each piece of shared technology came with comprehensive educational resources. Species that had been technologically suppressed for millennia suddenly found themselves with the tools to develop, to grow, to become something more than mere Imperial subjects. On Kryax Prime, the central administrative world of the Jareen hegemony, panic began to spread. Communication networks that had been stable for millennia now fragmented with terrifying speed. Each broadcast from the humans carried a mixture of strategic information and hope. Dr. James Henderson tracked the technological evolution happening across liberated colonies. It's not just about liberation, he noted. It's about potential. Captured Jareen research facilities became centers of collaborative development. Species that had been enemies for millennia now found themselves working together, guided by human researchers who understood the power of collaborative innovation. The collapse was not violent. It was systematic, precise, almost surgical. Commander Kryax realized the true nature of humanity's strategy during one particular interview. The humans weren't seeking revenge. They were seeking understanding. Each question was a window into a different way of perceiving galactic civilization. We're offering a choice, Dr. Chen explained, not submission, not conquest, collaboration. The Jareen Imperial communication networks became a vector of their own destruction. Each attempt to maintain control revealed another weakness, another opportunity for liberation. The myth of Imperial invincibility crumbled with each broadcast. Entire star systems began to redefine themselves. The rigid Imperial structure that had existed for millennia transformed into something fluid, something alive. Admiral Harper watched the evolving galactic map. What was happening was more than a military victory. It was a fundamental reimagining of interstellar civilization. We're not just defeating an empire, she told her closest advisors. We're creating a new framework of galactic cooperation. The Jareen hegemony continued to fragment, not through external force, but through the power of information, technological empowerment, and the fundamental human belief that every species has potential. Commander Kryax, now a reluctant participant in this transformation, understood a truth that would have been inconceivable mere months ago. The most powerful weapon was not a weapon at all. It was hope. The Imperial collapse continued, and the galaxy watched in astonishment as humanity rewrote the fundamental rules of galactic civilization. The Galactic Cooperative Assembly convened in a structure that defied traditional diplomatic expectations. Floating in neutral space, constructed from technologies contributed by multiple species, the Assembly Hall represented something entirely new. Admiral Elizabeth Harper stood at the center of a holographic representation that mapped the potential of collaborative development. This wasn't a peace conference. This was the birth of a new way of understanding galactic civilization. Delegates from hundreds of species filled the chamber. Former Imperial subjects, newly liberated civilizations, species that had been enemies for millennia now sat side by side, united by a framework developed through humanity's unique approach to cooperation. We are not here to establish dominance, Harper began, her voice carried by advanced translation systems that captured not just words, but nuanced cultural contexts. We are here to establish potential. Dr. Maya Chen had spent months preparing the foundational documents. The framework was revolutionary. Instead of a hierarchy, it proposed a network of collaborative development. Each species would contribute its unique capabilities, its distinct evolutionary advantages. The Jareen delegation sat in a carefully designated section. Commander Kryax, once a symbol of Imperial might, now represented a species in transition. His presence was both a symbol of defeat and a testament to the possibility of transformation. Technological transfer protocols were carefully designed. No single species would have complete access to all developments. Instead, a distributed system of collaborative research would ensure balanced progress. Humanity's role was not that of a conqueror, but of a facilitator. Adaptive Cooperation Protocol, Dr. James Henderson explained to the assembled delegates, is about recognizing that no single species has all the answers. Our strength is in our collective potential. The framework addressed more than just technological development. Cultural preservation became a key component. Species would be supported in maintaining their unique identities while participating in a broader galactic ecosystem. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez presented the most revolutionary aspect of the new framework, a communication network that would allow unprecedented levels of cultural and scientific exchange. Not a forced integration, but a voluntary collaboration. Former Jareen colonies began to demonstrate remarkable transformations. Species that had been technologically suppressed for millennia now found themselves with unprecedented resources for development. Educational platforms developed by human researchers became available to every participating civilization. "We're not rebuilding an empire," Admiral Harper emphasized during a closed strategic session. "We're creating a framework for collective evolution." The technological innovations were staggering. Quantum communication networks developed through collaborative research, medical technologies that could transform entire planetary ecosystems, energy production systems that could rehabilitate previously uninhabitable worlds. Commander Kryax observed the proceedings with a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. The humans had done something the Jareen Empire had never considered possible. They had transformed conflict into an opportunity for collective growth. Diplomatic protocols were designed with unprecedented flexibility. No species would be forced to participate. Each would have the ability to contribute at their own pace in their own way. Dr. Chen's research teams continued to develop adaptive technologies that could be shared across species, communication systems that could bridge not just linguistic barriers, but fundamental differences in perception and cognition. The first collaborative research stations began to take shape. Mixed teams of researchers from dozens of species working together on challenges that no single civilization could solve alone. "This is more than a diplomatic framework," Dr. Henderson noted during a strategic review. "This is the beginning of a new way of understanding collective potential." Humanitarian aid protocols were developed alongside technological collaboration. Species that had been devastated by Imperial control would receive support for ecological restoration, cultural preservation, and technological development. The Jareen found themselves in a unique position. Not conquered, but given a choice: integrate and collaborate, or be left behind by the rapidly evolving galactic framework. Admiral Harper understood the profound nature of what was being created. This wasn't just a new political structure. It was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent species could interact. As the first collaborative research projects began, something remarkable happened. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together, discovering shared challenges, and developing collective solutions. Commander Kryax made a decision that would have been unthinkable months ago. He volunteered the Jareen's unique atmospheric engineering capabilities to a joint research project. The galaxy watched in anticipation. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had transformed a potential apocalyptic conflict into an opportunity for collective growth. The first chapter of a new galactic civilization had begun.